They didn't call you back. They didn't explain why. The meeting just moved on, like you'd never spoken at all. That's the part nobody prepares you for, not the rejection itself. You can survive a no. What's harder to carry is the silence afterward, the sense that you've been quietly filed away as irrelevant. And underneath that silence, a question starts to grow, one you don't say out loud. What if they saw something true? What if the door didn't just close? What if it closed because you actually didn't measure up? You can feel that question after a job application disappears into a portal. You can feel it when someone else gets the promotion you thought you had earned. You can feel it when a client listens politely, says they'll get back to you, and never does. Or when a relationship ends, and the other person seems to move on before you've even understood what happened. The circumstances change. The private fear sounds almost the same. Maybe this decision revealed something permanent about me. Here's what tends to happen next. You don't walk away from that moment. You start orbiting it. You take the next job, the next project, the next relationship, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you're still performing for the people who dismissed you. You work harder, not because the work demands it, but because some part of you is still trying to make them regret what they did. You post the achievement. You mention the new title. You wait, without quite admitting it, for word to get back to them. And that's the trap, not the rejection. What comes after it? The moment you let the people who turned you down keep scoring your life from a distance, you've handed them a permanent seat in every decision you make. They don't even have to know it's happening. You could build an entire decade around proving something to someone who stopped thinking about you the week after they said no. There's a strange kind of math at work here. The more desperately you try to prove a rejection was wrong, the more power you give to the people who delivered it. You can't out-earn, out-achieve, or outperform your way to peace if the scoreboard you're using was built by someone else, using rules they never fully explained in the first place. And let's be honest about something most motivational advice avoids. Not every rejection is unfair. Some of it is timing. Some of it is budget, politics, limited information, or a mismatch between what you offer and what the moment requires. Some rejection contains something worth hearing. Pretending every no was secretly caused by jealousy or fear does you no favors. It only replaces one distortion with another. What you need isn't a comforting story in which you're always right and everyone else is blind. You need a way to look at what happened clearly enough to use it without letting it define you. That requires more courage than anger, because anger can dismiss everything. Clarity has to sort through it. That's what this episode is about. 5 practical strategies, inspired by the strategic thinking of Sun Tzu, for taking your future back from people who may not even remember making a decision about it. By the 4th strategy, something important shifts. Competence stops needing a longer defense. It starts needing evidence instead, a different kind of leverage that doesn't require anyone's permission to exist. A 2003 neuroimaging study of social exclusion found that being left out engaged some of the same brain regions associated with the distress of physical pain. The experiences aren't identical, and the study doesn't mean every rejection is a physical injury. What it does help explain is why exclusion can feel immediate and deeply personal, even when the event looks small from the outside. That sting isn't proof that the verdict was accurate. It's evidence that belonging, recognition, and social standing matter to human beings. Once you understand that, you can stop treating the intensity of your reaction as confirmation that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Something painful happened. The feeling is real. The meaning still has to be examined. Now, about Sun Tzu. The Art of War is an ancient military text concerned with armies, terrain, resources, and the decisions of commanders. It wasn't written about careers, breakups, business proposals, or self-worth, and this video isn't pretending otherwise. What the text offers is a disciplined way of thinking about where to direct effort and when persistence becomes waste. Those principles can be applied to modern setbacks as long as the application is responsible and the people around you aren't reduced to enemies on a battlefield. Strategy 1 is this: reclaim the objective. Rejection has a way of quietly rewriting your goals. You stop wanting a good career and start wanting to outshine the manager who overlooked you. You stop wanting to build something meaningful and start wanting to impress the client who ignored your proposal. You stop wanting to heal from a breakup and start wanting your ex to notice how well you're doing. The original goal doesn't disappear. It just gets a passenger it never asked for. There's a simple way to catch that happening. Take a piece of paper, or sit with the questions honestly, and answer 2 things. First, what am I trying to prove? Second, what am I actually trying to build? Write both answers without editing yourself. Maybe the first answer is, I want them to know they made a mistake. Fine. Don't judge the answer. Name it. Then look at the second one. Perhaps you want work that pays well without consuming your entire life. Maybe you want to create something useful, become excellent at a craft, raise a stable family, regain your health, or build relationships where respect doesn't have to be negotiated every week. Those are objectives. They can guide a decision. Make them regret it cannot. The test that matters is simple. Does your second answer still hold up if the person who rejected you never learns what happens next? If the goal only makes sense in a world where they're watching, taking notes, and eventually feeling regret, it isn't fully yours. It's a message addressed to them, dressed up as a life plan. Now remove their name from the goal. Remove the imagined audience. Write the objective in terms of what you want to create, protect, learn, contribute, or experience. A goal that survives their permanent absence from the story is one you can actually own. This doesn't require pretending you no longer care. You may still care. You may still imagine the phone call, the apology, or the moment they finally notice. Human beings don't erase emotions by issuing themselves an order. The strategic shift is that those emotions no longer get to write the schedule. When the urge to prove something returns, create a small pause. Ask, if they never saw this, would I still choose it? Sometimes the answer will be yes. Good. Continue. Sometimes the answer will be no, and that doesn't mean you're weak. It means you just found a decision that still belongs to the old rejection. This is the first move away from humiliation. The sting may still be there, but your future is beginning to separate from their attention. Strategy 2 is this. Audit the verdict. A rejection shouldn't be swallowed whole, and it shouldn't be thrown out entirely. Both instincts are understandable. One turns a single decision into a life sentence. The other turns every uncomfortable piece of feedback into evidence that the world is unfair. Neither response gives you useful information. An audit is different from a trial. You're not trying to prove that you were innocent and the other side was guilty. You're trying to determine what is known, what is uncertain, and what can be tested next. Ask 4 questions. What actually occurred, meaning the facts rather than the feelings? What feedback, if any, was clearly stated? What am I only assuming because fear is filling in the gaps? And what small test could give me better information than the guessing I'm doing now? Suppose you applied for a job and never received a response. The fact is that you weren't invited to an interview. The story might be that you're unqualified, too old, too inexperienced, or permanently behind. But the silence doesn't tell you which of those explanations is true. The employer may have received hundreds of applications. The role may have changed. An internal candidate may have been selected. Your resume may also be weak. The honest answer is that you don't know yet. A useful test would produce more information. You could ask a qualified person to review the resume. You could apply for several comparable roles using a revised version and compare the response. You could speak with someone who understands the field instead of asking a friend who only wants to protect your feelings. The goal isn't to collect reassurance. It's to improve the quality of the evidence. Then sort what you're looking at. Was this about a missing skill or a mismatch in fit? Was it bad timing, a subjective preference, internal politics you never saw, or a limitation in the person making the call? Was the standard clear? Did you receive the same feedback from several qualified people, or are you building an identity around one person's reaction? Sometimes you won't have enough information to know. That's a valid conclusion. Uncertainty can feel less satisfying than blame, but it's often more honest. This isn't about diagnosing the person who rejected you. You don't know all their pressures, instructions, preferences, or private reasoning, and guessing rarely helps. A harsh comment can still carry a useful data point. A polite, professional decision can still be based on incomplete information. Neither kindness nor cruelty tells you how accurate the verdict was. Your job isn't to accept the verdict as final truth. It's to extract whatever real information exists inside it, without swallowing the identity attached to it. Keep the data. Question the story. Test what can be tested. Let the rest remain unknown until better evidence arrives. So here's a question worth sitting with. After a rejection, what stings more for you? The anger of being underestimated, or the quiet doubt that maybe they were right? Drop one word in the comments. Anger or doubt. Either answer is honest, and either one tells you something about where to focus next. Once you've separated real feedback from noise, another problem appears. A painful verdict often makes people try to fix everything about themselves at once. Every weakness becomes urgent. Every gap feels disqualifying. The result is a lot of motion with no clear strength emerging from it. What changes the next decision isn't improvement in every direction. It's a specific, demonstrable advantage the old judgment didn't account for. Building that advantage on purpose is the next strategy. Strategy 3 is this. Build the overlooked advantage. The instinct after rejection is usually to widen the effort. Work harder everywhere. Fix every flaw. Take every course. Say yes to every opportunity. It feels responsible, but it can spread your attention so thin that no capability becomes strong enough to notice. The strategic move is narrower. Identify one capability that is real, valuable, and provable, but wasn't properly measured by the old decision. Not a personality label. Not better energy. Not be more confident. Choose something another person could observe in your work or behavior. This might be speed of execution. It could be the consistency to deliver when other people lose interest. Maybe it's the ability to explain a complex subject in language a customer understands. It could be deep knowledge of a small market, a process that reduces errors, or the trust you have built inside a community by showing up for years. None of these qualities require the original gatekeeper's permission to develop. But overlooked doesn't mean imaginary. Don't choose an advantage because it sounds unique in your head. Look for evidence that it matters. What problems are people repeatedly trying to solve? Where do projects stall? What do clients, coworkers, or audiences thank people for? Which capability would make someone else's work easier, faster, safer, clearer, or more reliable? If you're an employee who keeps being told you lack leadership experience, your advantage may not be another general leadership course. It may be the ability to take one neglected process, organize it, and help a small group produce a visible result. If you're a creator whose work is being ignored, the answer may not be posting more of the same thing. It could be learning to explain one difficult idea with unusual clarity. If you're building a business, the advantage may be faster response, better follow-through, or a service designed for a group larger competitors don't understand well. The point isn't to become unusual for the sake of being unusual. It's to concentrate effort where competence can become useful and visible. This is where Sun Tzu's strategic thinking becomes genuinely useful, if we keep it in proportion. There's a line from The Art of War in Lionel Giles' translation. Appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to places where you are not expected. Sun Tzu was writing about ancient military campaigns, where to send an army, and where an opposing force wouldn't be prepared. He wasn't writing about careers, self-worth, or rejection. And to be clear, the people who turned you down are not enemies. Treating them that way distorts what happened and traps you in a fight nobody needs you to continue. The useful principle is narrower. Stop concentrating all your effort in the one place where you're stuck proving yourself to people who have already made a decision. Develop value in places where the old label doesn't control the entire evaluation. That might mean building experience through a smaller organization instead of waiting for a large one to approve you. It might mean serving 10 real customers before asking an investor to believe a forecast. It might mean publishing useful work where people can find it instead of waiting for an invitation to demonstrate what you know. Not to defeat anyone. Not to stage a dramatic return. Just to stop allowing one closed door to define the size of the world outside it. Choose one capability you can meaningfully develop and demonstrate during the next 30 days. Define it in behavioral terms. Instead of become a better communicator, choose deliver a 5-minute update that explains the problem, the decision needed, and the next action without unnecessary detail. Instead of be more disciplined, choose finish and publish one complete piece of work every week for 4 weeks. Then decide what evidence would show progress. A finished project. Fewer errors. A clearer presentation. Faster turnaround. Feedback from people qualified to assess the work. A repeatable process. If you can't describe what improvement would look like, the goal is still too vague. Keep the scope narrow enough to finish. Rejection can create a hunger for a transformation so dramatic that ordinary progress feels insulting. Resist that impulse. You don't need to become an entirely different person in 30 days. You need one honest result that didn't exist before. This is the shift from scattered anger to focused agency. You're no longer trying to improve everything, everywhere, all at once. You're building one strength that can survive contact with reality, and that sets up the next move, because capability alone isn't always visible. How you demonstrate it, and to whom, matters just as much. Strategy 4 is this. Replace explanation with verifiable proof. Notice what happens after you've been overlooked. The temptation is to explain more. You explain your potential, intentions, history, obstacles, and what you could accomplish if someone finally gave you the chance. The explanation gets longer and more urgent. Somewhere inside that urgency, a quiet signal appears. I need you to believe what I can't yet show. That doesn't mean explanations are useless. Context matters. Good people are overlooked for reasons that have nothing to do with ability, and work doesn't always speak for itself. Access, relationships, communication, and timing matter. The strategy is not to become silent. It's to shrink the distance between the claim and the demonstration. Think of proof as a ladder. At the bottom is a statement. I can do this. Above it is a sample. Here is a small version I completed. Above that is a pattern. Here are several examples produced consistently. Higher still is outside verification. Customers, colleagues, or qualified evaluators who can describe what changed because of the work. You don't need every level at once. You need to move one step above unsupported assertion. If you're trying to change careers, proof might be a portfolio built from real projects, including self-directed ones that solve an actual problem. If you're seeking more responsibility at work, it might be a record of decisions you improved, problems you prevented, or systems you made easier for other people to use. If you're offering a service, proof could be a small paid pilot with a clearly defined outcome. If you're rebuilding trust, proof isn't a speech about how much you've changed. It's a pattern of behavior that remains consistent when the conversation is no longer emotional. Be careful not to manufacture proof. Don't create fake testimonials, inflated numbers, staged demand, or misleading before and after stories. Those tactics may produce attention, but they destroy the credibility you're trying to build. Verifiable proof has to remain honest when someone looks more closely. Evidence doesn't force recognition. A strong portfolio can still be ignored. A qualified candidate can still be rejected. A reliable person can still be misunderstood. Proof doesn't control another person's decision. It reduces how much your progress depends on persuasion and makes what you've built portable. When a result exists somewhere concrete, it can travel. A body of work can be shown to another employer. A documented process can be used in another team. A satisfied customer can introduce you to another customer. A skill demonstrated in one context can open a conversation in a different one. You no longer have to stand next to every claim and defend it from the beginning. This differs from disappearing into total isolation and hoping the world somehow notices later. You still need feedback. You still need relationships. You still have to put the work where relevant people can assess it. The objective is not secrecy. It's to finish something real enough that the next conversation starts with evidence instead of another plea for belief. Psychologists use the term implementation intentions for plans built around a clear if-then structure. The idea is that specifying a cue and a response can help translate an intention into action. It doesn't guarantee the outcome. It simply makes the next behavior less dependent on mood or last-minute negotiation. If I finish the first draft by Friday, then I'll share it with 2 qualified people for honest feedback is more useful than I should probably build something soon. If I receive another rejection, then I'll record the facts, wait until the emotional spike settles, and choose one test is more actionable than I'll try not to take it personally. Create one if-then plan for the proof you're building. Make the cue specific. Make the response small enough to perform and important enough to move the work forward. Then put it on a calendar. Strategy becomes real when it reaches a date, a place, and an action. Picture 2 versions of the same month. In one, you repeatedly explain why you deserved an opportunity nobody offered. In the other, you complete one real piece of work, ask for qualified feedback, revise it, and place it where a new decision can happen. The second version doesn't guarantee a yes. It gives the next yes something solid to evaluate. That's the resolution of the question opened earlier. Competence stops depending entirely on how persuasively you can argue for yourself in the moment. It becomes something another person can examine. That changes how you move through rejection. The confidence isn't loud, and it isn't borrowed. It comes from evidence you helped create. But one question remains. Even with a clear objective, an honest audit, a real advantage and visible proof, what happens if you keep funneling everything back toward the same person, company, or institution that rejected you? What happens if they remain the only judge whose opinion counts? That's the piece that determines whether everything you've built creates options or simply becomes a stronger version of the same old appeal. Strategy 5 is this: expand who gets to decide. This strategy brings the others together because it addresses the concentration of power underneath the rejection. You can reclaim your objective, audit the verdict, build an advantage, and produce evidence that can be examined. Then still hand your entire future to a single company, client, relationship, or institution as if no other legitimate decision could exist. One decision-maker can say no. That no may be valid for the opportunity they control. It doesn't automatically qualify them to decide every opportunity that follows. Expanding who gets to decide doesn't mean running from judgment or surrounding yourself only with people who agree. If every evaluator who offers difficult feedback is dismissed as not my audience, you're not building options. You're building protection from reality. Real options expose the work to more qualified evaluation, not less. They give you multiple places to learn whether the problem is skill, fit, timing, communication, access, or demand. One response is an event. A pattern across several relevant responses is information. In practice, this might mean speaking with several companies instead of pinning every hope on one. Presenting an idea to more than one market. Building professional relationships before you urgently need them. Testing your work with smaller audiences before betting everything on a single launch. Diversifying clients so one cancellation doesn't erase the business. Seeking evaluators who understand the field rather than waiting on the opinion of whoever happened to be in the last room. For a creator, expanding who decides might mean publishing in more than one format and studying where the idea genuinely connects, rather than assuming one platform's early silence is a final verdict. For a professional, it could mean looking beyond the title your current employer won't give you and identifying where the same capability is valued. For an entrepreneur, it may mean interviewing several types of customers before concluding that the entire idea has failed. This isn't about spraying applications, messages, or proposals at everyone. Volume without learning is just another way to avoid the audit. Each new path should be relevant, intentional, and informed by what the previous attempt taught you. And this strategy must be handled carefully in personal relationships. Expanding who gets to decide is not about pressuring someone who said no. It isn't about proving a point to an ex, wearing someone down, or treating new people as instruments in a comeback story. A no in a relationship deserves to be respected. Reflection belongs to you. Their boundary belongs to them. The comeback doesn't happen by overcoming another person's resistance. It happens by rebuilding a full life that isn't permanently organized around their absence. That may include friendship, community, family, purpose, work, and eventually another relationship. Not as substitutes displayed for revenge, but as parts of a life that still deserves to grow. Start by naming 3 new paths that could produce a legitimate next decision, not 3 people who will flatter you. 3 places where the relevant value can actually be tested. If one path depends on the original gatekeeper changing their mind, it doesn't count as new. Then ask what each path requires. A conversation? A portfolio? A referral? A small sample? A stronger skill? A clear boundary? A month of consistent work? The path becomes real when it has an entry point. Options also change your posture. When one conversation carries your entire future, desperation leaks into it. You over-explain. You tolerate conditions you know are wrong. You negotiate against yourself before the other person has even spoken. When you have several legitimate paths, you can listen more clearly because no single answer has to rescue your identity. That is the shift from needing approval to holding autonomy. Not the hollow kind that pretends not to care. The practical kind, created by having more than one place where your effort can lead. Now bring the 5 strategies together. You reclaimed the objective, so the goal no longer exists, mainly to send a message to somebody else. You audited the verdict, keeping useful information while refusing to turn uncertainty into identity. You built one overlooked advantage instead of scattering energy across every perceived flaw. You replaced unsupported explanations with proof that can be assessed, and you expanded who gets to decide, reducing the power of one verdict over everything that follows. Put this into motion with 5 notes. First, write the objective that would still matter if the person who rejected you never learned what happened next. Second, record one honest, verifiable fact contained in the rejection. Not the fear. Not the insult your mind added. The fact. Third, choose the specific advantage you will develop during the next 30 days. Make it observable. Fourth, define the proof you will produce. Give it a deadline and an if-then plan that moves it forward. Fifth, name 3 new people, places, or paths where a qualified next decision could occur. This isn't a complete life plan. It's a first move that puts decision-making back within your reach. At the beginning, what you wanted was for someone to take it back. The rejection, the dismissal, the verdict that made you feel invisible. You wanted the call, the apology, the message admitting they'd misjudged you. Maybe part of you still wants that. There's no shame in admitting it. But as the strategy changes, the goal changes with it. You stop requiring the old decision to be reversed before your life can continue. You stop organizing your mornings, ambitions, and sense of worth around an appeal that may never be heard. You begin building work, relationships, skills, and options that can be evaluated in the present, not sentenced by the past. The people who counted you out don't have to become villains. They also don't have to become your final judges. Their decision can remain part of your history without becoming the organizing principle of your identity. That isn't the absence of pain. It's the moment pain stops holding the pen. If you want more practical strategies for rebuilding your life after being counted out, subscribe to The Comeback General.